Thank you once again to Peter Falcon for being here with us today. So before I start, I would like to introduce myself again. My name is Pat, and I am studying in M3 or grade 9 right now, and I am the Climate Club's president for this year. For the past 2 years of being a member in the club, I quickly fell in love with this club. I feel like the Climate Club is all about everything around us. While a lot of people might be overlooking or forgetting about these things, I feel like these things, whether it's about space or about environment and weather, we all live around these things every day. And I share the same goals with everyone in the club as well. Speaking of the members, they have come up with the questions and the things that they are curious about, and I will be asking them today. So let's start the Q&A. The first question is, if you were not working for NASA, what would you do for a living?
That's a great question. When I went to school, I actually studied psychology. So I was going for my bachelor's in psychology. I was working with with students as well, and I was going for my master's in child development. So I can see myself once again working with students because I just love that interaction and helping them as well. So I can see myself being a child psychologist, which is, as I mentioned, what I was actually going to school for.
Wow, that's very interesting. So let's move on to the second question, which is, how did you become NASA scientist?
So I'm actually a NASA educator, and I've been there for, oh, I can't believe I'm going to say this, like 28 years. I actually had hair back then. That's how long I've been there. Um, I started a year after high school. So I actually worked at McDonald's, and then I pretty much worked at NASA. I started as a summer intern for a 3-month period, but they liked my work ethic. They liked that I asked a lot of questions, and they decided to keep me as an academic part-time employee. So I basically went to school full-time and worked part-time. And once again, when I graduated, a position opened up, and I just asked lots of questions and got to know a lot of the engineers, a lot of scientists. And when the person who had my job retired, she recommended the project hire me because I knew a lot about both engineering and science for that particular instrument. And it's a great place to work, so I just never left. And it's been 28 years since I was hired in June 1993.
Wow, that's a very long and interesting story. So let's move on to the third question, which is, someone said that I want to be working for NASA too. So do you have any advice on what I should do?
Oh yes, there's quite a few different ways to work at NASA. One of the ways I would suggest is if you're interested in science and engineering, look up a science publication or engineer that you're interested in, read up on their work, and then email them. You can find their email in NASA directory or on the bottom of their paper, and just build that rapport. Just say, hey, Dr. Johnson, I saw your paper in marine biology. I'm really interested in that. What do you think of? And just start asking them questions. Build that rapport. And then you'll find that people love to talk about what they do, especially scientists. And then once you build that rapport, just say, hey, I was wondering if you have any funds for an intern. They might say yes, they might say no, or they might say, I don't, but my colleague, who I think you'd be a really good fit for, does have some funding. Let me introduce you to them. So that's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. You'll still have to apply like everyone else, but because you built that rapport, they can say, Dr. Johnson can say, hey, HR, human relations, give me the top 100 candidates and make sure you give me Pat's resume, put hers on top because I have a really good rapport with her. And she's one of the candidates I want to strongly consider to hire. And that is a great way to kind of network and work with people. And meeting Dorian and myself is a great start to that.
Wow, that's a very great tip. So, moving on to the fourth question, which is, how many hours do you work and how many hours do you sleep? Have you ever stayed up very late to work on a project?
Yes, all the time. My hours vary, especially now that I'm working from home quite a bit for the past year. It's not uncommon to either get up super early to work with students from different countries or stay up really late to work with students from other countries. Just depends on where they're at. I try to stay flexible So, I'm trying to help as much as I can. So I don't mind waking up super early or staying up really late. We work roughly 9-hour days at the center I work at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So they're 9-hour days, but often they can be a bit longer, just depending on the workflow, right? And as amount as hours I sleep, probably not enough. Anywhere between probably 6 and 7 hours. Yeah, I need to go to sleep more. But sometimes the work is really interesting, so you just want to stay up and do more and learn more because there's a lot to learn about so much stuff that we do at NASA.
Indeed, there's a lot of things to do when you're a NASA scientist, right? Moving on to the fifth question, which is, what do you think will when do you think we'll be able to go to Mars? Do you think that in the future we might need to move to Mars and abandon Earth completely?
Well, if we don't change our pattern, if we don't do a better job monitoring our carbon footprint, and with our population rise, I believe we're like at 7.9 million people now, and I think it's going to bump up to I'm sorry, billion, and I think it's going to bump up to like 9 point something in the next coming years, next like by 2050, I believe. It's getting to a point where we're not going to have enough resources to feed all these people. So that's why Mars is a consideration for us when we talk about going to other planets and colonizing other planets. Mars is the one that's kind of close, nearby Earth. It takes 7 to 9 months to get there, and also it's kind of Earth-like in its form. So I can see us dabbling into going into Mars with human exploration in the next 20 years or so. Different companies have different dates. I believe SpaceX and other companies, other agencies have a quicker date. But for NASA, if we send somebody to Mars, we got to make sure we send you there and we got to get you back safely. So for us, we're going to be a bit more cautious with our time frame. So I would say in the next 10 to 20 years, I can see an astronaut going to space. And that first astronaut may actually not be a man. The best qualified person to go to Mars may actually be a woman, because we're finding out through more research that women's bodies actually responded differently to irradiation compared to men's. So we need to do more research on that topic. But as of right now, it may seem like the first person to go to Mars may be a woman.
Very interesting indeed. Now let's move on to the sixth question, which is, what is the most memorable memory for you working at NASA?
I think for me, the most memorable parts are when I get to go to travel and work with students in different countries and learn a bit about their culture, learn about their language, their traditions. For me, it's like they want to learn about what I do, but I really want to learn about them as well. So I really enjoy the candid conversations that we have. Thailand has actually been one of my favorite trips. I've actually gone there twice. That's how much I really liked it. Is I got to go there 2 times, and just traveling around and seeing the way life is in different parts of the world, it makes me feel like I'm a more worldly person. And then when I come home, I really appreciate the things that I do have, because I've seen life in different parts of the world with different resources. And then I really appreciate the things I have. And I realize I don't need that other car. I don't need a bigger house. I'm fine where I'm at, and I'm happy because I've got to see the way other people's lives are, and it makes me more grounded as a person. So those shared experiences with students are the best part and most memorable parts of my job.
Wow, we are very honored that you really like Thailand, and I agree too with you that getting to meet people is a very memorable memory. So, with that said, let's move on to the seventh question, which is, how has COVID-19 affected you being a NASA scientist? Is there anything that NASA did to help ease this pandemic for you?
So I actually haven't been in the laboratory for about a year and a half now. We have about 8,000 employees at the laboratory that I work at. So as you can imagine, if just one person has COVID, it's going to just blow up. So since March of last year, we actually have not been in the laboratory. So I've been working from home for the past year and a half. Just really different when you have to work with a lot of different people. A lot of webinars, a lot of Zoom meetings. So that has really affected the way I work. Also, no longer traveling, which is, like I said, a really bummer for me because that was like my favorite part. It's going to meet different people. So once those restrictions are lifted, I'll be able to go and continue my work with other countries and students from different parts of the world. Um, what else? Oh, yes. What has NASA done? Well, if you recall, in the early stages of COVID, there was a lot of respiratory problems, and there was not enough machines to help facilitate people with their breathing. I forgot what the machine is called. Gosh, I'm blanking on the name. But when you have a lot of engineers and they don't have work to do, they get busy doing stuff. So we actually had groups of engineers that came together to make machines that helped COVID patients with the breathing apparatus. So we actually had two teams that came together. They created these ventilators. That's the word I'm looking for, ventilators, because there was a shortage in ventilators. So they actually produced ventilators, showed it to our president. He liked the idea, and they started producing them to help people who had COVID, who were affected with COVID and had trouble breathing. So that's a nice way that these engineers gave back because they had time to work on projects like a ventilator for people.
That's very interesting how COVID-19 has affected your job differently. And well, while COVID-19 has affected all of us, all we have the same thoughts in common is that we are going to go through this pandemic together, and hopefully it will end very soon. Moving on to my eighth question, which is, how were your grades during high school? Do you think that even though the person asking is not a grade A student, um, they will have a chance to be working for NASA?
Yes, absolutely. I was not a grade A student. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I was, borderline, somewhere between maybe B's and C's, somewhere around there. Um, but I made sure that I told myself I was going to be the first person in my family to go to college and to graduate. My family had immigrated from Mexico, and they were very poor. So I have a lot of aunts, a lot of cousins, but nobody had ever gone to university. So I wanted to make sure I was the first. So I was very, very passionate about that, and very, very forceful to make sure that I did my coursework as best as I could, but also as I was going to school, I was working, had to provide for myself as well. So what I did was I asked lots of questions. I was very inquisitive. So once I was able to work at NASA as an intern, as I mentioned, I asked lots of questions, learned a lot about how people did their jobs, how things related to each other, and then I started making connections. So when I would go on to something else, I would make that connection and say, hey, that satellite looks like this satellite. Is it from the same company? And then people said, like, yes, it is. And then I started learning about radars and lasers and science. And the more I learned, the better at my job I got, and the more essential I got as well. So just by having an inquisitive nature, by meeting a lot of people, it actually helped me with my job. And like I said, I've been there for 28 years. So I think that's one of the key factors that we look for at NASA. Yes, we want you to have great grades. We want you to be inquisitive. We want you to want to learn new things as well. But we also want to make sure that you're a high-driven person, which I was, and that you work well with others. So although I was, didn't have one of those four things, I was really good at the others. And like I said, they must think so too because I'm still there.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of students that listen to you will be motivated and will be inspired to someday maybe work at NASA as well. So now let's move on to the ninth question, which is, did you dream to be a NASA scientist when you were young, and what were your dreams?
Uh, Absolutely not. I did not dream about being a NASA scientist, educator, communicator, anything with NASA. I thought, much like every other kid, like, oh, that's cool, but I can't do that. That's way out there. Um, as a kid, I probably dreamed about being a Jedi. I love Star Wars. I think I was dreaming about doing that. Um, but when I started, thinking about work and careers, as I mentioned, I thought about being a child psychologist. I even went to school for a few years to be an architect. So I have 2 years of architecture school under my belt, so to speak. So I really was going in that direction. Those are two things that really interest me. And as I started working at NASA, I realized like, hey, this is pretty cool stuff. And then the more you listen to people talk, the more you ask questions, and the more you realize this is really neat, and I really want to do this. So although I don't have a background, a traditional background in science, like a lot of my colleagues, I was blessed with a very inquisitive nature. So that kind of helped me along the way. So as I mentioned, I don't have a degree in earth science or meteorology or whatever, but what I do have is a very passionate about my position and also a very inquisitive nature. And I really hope that a lot of other students have that same ideology as far as just asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and you'll get very far in life.
Wow, that's a very good and interesting advice, and I'm sure that a lot of students will find it very useful. And lastly, do you have like anything or a message you want to say to the students that are in the Climate Club?
Yes, I would love to. First off, I want to join your club. I already am following you. At least I wanted to follow you. I submitted my request. If you have any questions, if you need help with anything, please by all means reach out. Part of the thing of working in a career and getting your career started is networking. It's meeting people that can help you along the way, that can provide guidance or just some information for you. So I encourage you, whether you're interested in NASA or not, or just other things, email me. I'm happy to discuss anything you like to discuss. I'm happy to help in any way. Like I said, I have lots and lots of cousins. I take pride in the fact that I get to watch over them when they're young, and now I see them growing up and they're young adults. So I look forward to meeting young students, but also following their career and helping them as much as I can as well. So if there's anything I can do to help you in any way, by all means, please ask. Like I said, maintain that inquisitive nature. Don't be afraid to ask, and work hard and study hard.
Thank you so much once again, Peter Falcon, for staying here late with us and answering. Well, that will be the end of my questions and answers section. It's very great to have you here and being able to talk to like a NASA scientist. It's an honor for me.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. And like I said, it's an honor for me. I really love that interaction. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Peter. Have a good day. We'll definitely be in touch.
Okay,
And
thank you
thank you,
guys.
Pat. Great job tonight, too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.